It feels great. It feels amazing. It's wild. I watched all the movies. I saw all the movies. I used to watch Beast Wars, which was like one of my favorite TV shows. And when I read the script and I found out that Primal and Cheetor and all of the beasts from Beast Wars were going to be in this movie, or most of them, I was like very excited. To be doing this kind of film and bring this adventure, like, you know what I'm saying, this kind of movie to the hood. I mean, that for me was what I was most excited about. Plus doing it with my friend, who's also from Brooklyn. She grew up in East New York, Dom, and I grew up in Bushwick. So, and it's cool. I think it was something about these like fantastical beasts, just like being able to do these like crazy things, and like you still connecting to. There was almost a sense of family with the Beast Wars too, like where between Cheetor and Rhinox and Primal, and like they had this thing where it was like you're seeing all these different animals come together, but then they like transform into these other things, you know what I'm saying, and they fight together and they protect each other and they love each other and they really like they go to war together, and it was like this. Just I think what was so cool about it was just like the kinship between them, and like, you know, and how like relatable they felt, you know, like it was crazy. Like, wow, how do I feel? Like I feel this gorilla, you know, like I feel this cheetah, you know what I'm saying? Stephen Caple was like, yo, like our director Stephen Caple Jr. was like, what do you want to bring to this movie? Like, what is your goal? And I said more than anything, I really want to bring heart to this film. I want people to not only care about the robots, but to care about the humans, and to care about the relationship between the humans and the robots. Like, why do we need the humans, right? We need them just as much as the robots, and vice versa, you know, and get into the heart of that. And I think that's what to me makes this piece so interesting, is like connecting these human beings to these giant, massive robot aliens, you know what I'm saying? These things that, you know, these two species that should never be connected at all, right? Like, and isn't that like a message for the world, right? Like these, like whoever you are, wherever you're from, right? Like there's a common ground, you know, between anyone, right? Everyone, really. We all have something in common, no matter where we come from or whatever. And I think that's what's so cool about this film, is like we use robots to tell that kind of story, and humans and that relationship between them, and then adding on the Maximals, which we've never seen in any of these films, and seeing, you know, the Autobots meet the Maximals, and then the Maximals meet us, and then us meet the Autobots, and all, you know, and then us come together and work together to fight to save the world, you know. I think there's something special in that. I play Noah Diaz. He is from Brooklyn. He was former military. And Noah's now with his mom and is living with his brother. His brother's ill. And Noah's just trying to find a way to support his family. Noah is this guy who just, he wants to do the right thing. Sometimes he doesn't quite know what that is. But at the core of his decision making, he just wants to do the right thing. He wants to take care of his people. He wants to take care of the ones he loves. And you quickly start to see that affinity and that love he has for his family, he begins to have for Mirage and Elena, and the Autobots in general. This movie's been challenging physically, I mean emotionally too. Like, again, we want to bring not just the action to this. We don't want just the action to be dynamic and exciting. And a part of that, you know, really, a part of that was, one, I wanted to do my own stunts. I was like, as many of these stunts as I can do, I'm gonna do them. And number two, it was like every single scene matters. There's no scene that does not matter. Every word matters. Every line matters. Like, when, again, something I love about Steven is he doesn't waste a word, not a moment, anything. Like, even if there aren't lines, there are lines. There are things happening. Where are the characters at emotionally all the time? Because the emotions are gonna they're gonna drive the actions. They're gonna drive the emotions are gonna drive the action in the film, right? This character's angry. This character's sad about this, so they're gonna fight, or this happens, or whatever. Or this person's gonna retreat. They're gonna hope, right? So it's all about where we're at emotionally, and we lead with that. And I think it's been a lot of work doing that and going the extra mile and doing the stunt training. I'm Anthony Ramos. I play Noah in Transformers Rise of the Beasts. I've been a fan of the franchise. Yes, I've seen every movie. And I watch Beast Wars I think it was Saturday or Sunday on TV. Working with him and seeing his vision and with him, and listening to him talk about the moments in the movie and us basing the movie, my character being from Brooklyn, I'm from Brooklyn. Dominique Fishback, who I co-star in this movie with, is also from Brooklyn, and us, being Black and Latino, being able to, be the leads of this film, and Steven also being, African American Latino, like, it feels special, it feels special in that way. And then on top of that, we got new characters, new robots being introduced, Optimus Primal, the Beast Wars, we're now introducing that, merging that world with the world that already existed, and then new villains, you got the Terrorcons, in this movie who are more powerful than the Decepticons, and you got Scourge, who's leading them, and then, we've got the Maximals with Optimus Primal and Cheetor and Air Razor and all these characters that I grew up watching, in Beast Wars, along with Bumblebee, along with Optimus Prime, and then obviously the Transformer who I'm closest to, Mirage, played by Pete Davidson, all of that, the movie being in New York and then going to Peru, and the culture of Peru really being embedded in this movie. We got to shoot in Peru, and we shot in Machu Picchu, we shot in Tarapoto, which is the Amazon, and then we shot in Cusco, which is the capital of the Inca people, right? And it just felt, you could feel a different kind of energy in Peru. It felt there was a power there, there was this mystical thing that I feel Peru has that you can't explain to people unless they go. Knowing Mirage, their friendship develops over time, because I think Noah sees, Mirage knows that there's this need. They begin to build this trust with each other, and they're like this kindred spirit, where Mirage is kind of the outcast of the guys, and Noah has felt like that in his own life, and I think they find this camaraderie in that. The car chase was, that was a wild scene, man. That was a wild scene because we had a stunt driver on the back. We had a rigged car, so he's on the back of the car actually driving the car while I'm in the driver's seat. And so you can shoot it in a way where it does look like the car is driving itself, and the cameras are here and behind me, and we can make it look like we were on the Williamsburg Bridge. But they did actually shoot in New York on the Williamsburg Bridge. They shot a bunch of wides and a bunch of overs on the bridge, and drone shots. So that was a wild scene, bro. That was a wild scene. Like, I had to do mad takes of me like moving back and forth and being thrown back in the car and the car bouncing and me yelling because the car's actually like being lifted up and then falling and things like that. So that was a really fun scene. Dominique Fishback is amazing. She's an elite actor, and so working with her was fun, man. And it was like Dom, we've been friends for years, so it was just like having your sister on set with you. You know what I'm saying? Having like somebody close to you, and it was just nice having a friend there that I've known for years. Tobe and Nwigwe, man, I mean, we just laughed for so long. Like, we laughed almost every day. Every day we got to work together, we laughed so hard, and he's so focused. Like, Tobe is so dedicated. He wants the scene to be as great as possible, same as Dom. And you know, and Tobe's just so natural too. He's naturally funny, so he just brought that to the character with ease. There's something cool about seeing animals turn into these mechanical robot like beings, you know, the same way we, you know, it's cool seeing the cars too, you know, it's cool, but it's like watching a cheetah turn into a transform, you know, and become this robot who can now fight and shoot and do all types of craziness, you know, like there's something really cool about that, man. You know, you bring in like this real life, here's this living thing, you know, that exists, and it's now turning into the same thing that car can turn into. You know what I'm saying? So I think people, you know, people enjoy it because also the characters are dynamic. Like anyone who's watched Beast Wars, know like Cheeto is the man. You know, Rhinox is a beast. You know, like Air Razor is a legendary character. You know, so to now merge those two worlds is I think, you know, you that's a recipe for something amazing.
So I play Elena Wallace, and fun fact for all you Brooklynites, Biggie fans, Biggie's last name is Wallace. He's Christopher Wallace. So I'm really excited that we got a little Biggie up in there. Elena Wallace is her name, and she works at the museum. She's very curious. She's kind of being a bit held back by her boss, and so she takes her life into her own hands when she sees like a sculpture. It's called a statuette. And she gets curious about it, and because she's curious, she starts investigating it, and then that kind of opens a whole new world, which then brings Noah into her life and the Autobots. And that's kind of how she starts. The bots have their different heights. You know, we must respect that they are different heights. So Prime might be up here, and Bumblebee's not that tall, and then, you know, Ares is flying, and then these are all these different things that you have to think about. So the imagination part wasn't the hard part. It was kind of getting eye lines right for camera. That was the harder part. Because I come from theater, and, you know, when you're doing monologues, a lot of times you're just talking to yourself. I have a one-woman show where I play 20 different characters, and so I'm on the stage by myself. So I'm kind of used to acting towards nothing. So I think it was more so for the camera and what the camera needs. Really, when I went into this and I was like talking to Steven about this, I was like, we have to prove why we need the humans, why humans are important. It's all about humanity, you know, and all about hearts and feelings. And essentially, if you're robots, you don't really feel. So how do you get that emotion if Mirage can't cry or Ereza can't cry? You know, you get it from the people. And then when the people love something, then you love them more. When a person doesn't want something to happen to this gigantic thing that's almost indestructible, you know, you got these like little people of flesh and blood being like, no, you can't do this, you know. I like it. It's nice. With Noah and Elena, they don't know each other at all. So they're really going based off of like faith, right? They meet under like super weird circumstances, but then they're thrust into this world where they have to run for their lives together, and each one they extend help to the other. And so while we're in the course of like meeting them for the first time, they're meeting each other, but they're building a relationship and they're building help so that they trust one another. And I love that about them. To be able to say I did that or to do something like that is really cool. I've always been a pretty athletic person, and I'm trying to get in on more of the action. So I'd be telling some people like, you know, hook your girl up, like give me something, you know. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, a lot of hard work, but good work. I'm really excited to go to Peru. I love I love to travel, and like I said, Anthony and I have been friends from before this, and I think seeing like a bunch of Brooklyn kids kind of live their dreams and travel, and that we get to do this part of it together is really cool. So I'm excited. Excited for the people that I met here, and that we get to go on this adventure together.
Well, we were looking for a new face, and faces, and it was originally written again to have a portion of the world that you know, the sort of projects in Brooklyn, the people that live there are not often represented in movies like this. So we were looking to create this experience where somebody it's taking them so far out of their comfort zone, and yet the trickiness of growing up in that environment, the challenges of that environment actually in some ways make you better suited to go through this, right? So Anthony was the first one we seized on, and in his case there's quite a bit to see, and there's quite a bit of variety in it. But really what attracted me to it was just how much you rooted for him. What we set out to do in this movie was add heart and spectacle and really make sure the two stuck together and that they served each other. And so the spectacle in this case is taking, we're shooting in Montreal, we're shooting in New York, we're shooting in Iceland, we're shooting in Cusco, we're shooting in the jungle, and we're shooting in Machu Picchu. We're taking you to Incan ruins, we're taking you to fabulous old Spanish colonial cities and deep, deep jungle. So it is really a big experience. We're bringing in the beasts, and they live in Peru, and they've been guarding a secret, which we'll come to learn. And it is the Autobots and the beasts that will combine to repel, hopefully, or the world's at stake, the bad guys. And I think it's going to be really fun, and there's a lot of, for core fans, there are so many things in here that I'm not going to divulge, but there are things that it's going to blow their mind that we put them in the movie. This is the meeting of the two sort of leaders of these groups, you know, and it's really a fun idea. And what's interesting about the two of them meeting, I think, is that there's a wisdom. We always think of Optimus as the wisest guy. Well, Primal in some ways has a different kind of wisdom, I guess. Optimus is very much the leader, you know, and has the answer. And Primal is definitely a leader, but he does it in a very different way. And so there are moments there's a really great moment in the movie where Optimus is having some doubt, and Primal can share the burden of leadership and give a different perspective on it. And so there's a wisdom that is transferred between these two rather mighty, awesome warriors. That's, again, a very deep idea, I think, and something for the audience to think about as well. Shooting Machu Picchu is one of the wonders of the world. He's just trying to recreate that. It doesn't feel right. And one of the things we have done on Transformers, and it is sort of our pact with our audience, is, you know, we went to Egypt and we shot the pyramids, and we went to Jordan and shot Petra, and so they're getting a real otherworldly experience that really is real. And so it's that combination of real and extraordinary, if you would, in terms of robots there, that is sort of our magic sauce, I guess. One of the wonderful things about Transformers is it does cross all borders. You know, I've traveled the world, and it's always remarkable to me how deep the fan base is.
Steven was somebody who grew up on our movies that we made originally, so he was a fan of those movies, and we've never really had somebody like that step into this role in the franchise. And he grew up in a different time and a different place. It's generational to some extent, because he just had a different view of Transformers and what was special about them. When Steven heard Beast Wars, he grew up on that part of the franchise and loved it and completely bought into it. So in a way, he gave us the courage to say, well, let's make a Beast Wars movie. It's going to be cool. It's not going to be, you know, too far over the line. When somebody like Steven comes to the table and he has, you know, a very fresh vision for, you know, the action, and has watched all of the other movies 50 times. So he knows what we've done. Mirage becomes a Porsche. And we've never had Porsche in these movies before. And I'm not sure why, but the rounded edges of that car and the beauty of the design and how that converts into a robot form with similarly smooth edges, I think that's going to really make that character stand out. These movies have had a tendency to travel the world. We've shot in a lot of international heritage sites and things like that, and Stonehenge and pyramids and various other places. And then we landed on Peru because nobody had really shot in Peru a major film before. Machu Picchu and the Incan culture as something that could be woven into our mythology with the Maximals and all of that felt like a natural fit, and it felt like something cinematically that would be unrivaled to anything we've done before.
I was a huge fan of Transformers as a kid, so that's where it all started for me. Like my first introduction was the actual movie, the Transformers movie back in the 80s, and VHS tape. Oh my God, I remember watching it at a friend's house, and I remember just the colors drew me in. But that was like my first real intro to Transformers. And then after that, it was Rise of the Beast, which I want to say was early 2000s that I started to get into it. And I just remember the impact it had on me. It was something new and different. I remember the CGI was different, in terms of a cartoon. And I was kind of like transitioning from my boy phase to my teenage years, so I kind of disappeared for a little bit. And then Michael Bay brought me back with 2007's, Bayverse start of Transformers 1. And that's when I was like, whoa, like what is this? And that's where I really got like enthralled and watched every single movie afterwards. So I'm part of the Bayverse fan club and Nightverse at Bumblebee. When I read the actual script, it was hard to say no. I had like ideas and thoughts that I wanted to implement, characters that I actually love on screen, or at least in the cartoons that I wanted to bring to on screen. And I just started to really dive into it, and that's how the Transformers came about. Paramount had asked me, and yeah, they felt like I was probably the right guy for it and had a certain amount of knowledge, but also heart, in terms of like what I want to bring to the table with the characters. So, yeah. Unicron is in our film, and so the Unicron graphic novel was really a big, huge influence on what I wanted to bring to the franchise. He is a character that was always kind of looming in the background in the Bayverse, in terms of the movies that he created, and we never got to really see the live action version of Unicron, and that was huge. So with the colors and how I wanted to implement this sort of godlike figure all really came from the graphic novel and the old 1986 cartoon movie. So the design is kind of like based off of that, as well as even some of the score and music cues we took from the 1986 cartoon movie, just to sort of create his own and unique sound. So I was very influenced by the nostalgia and what was done in the past to create the Transformers that we see today. With Anthony Ramos, he was the first one to be casted for the film, and I was like, wow, this dude's a really like physical actor. Like the way he uses his traits, he has a unique charm and a level of vulnerability that's really hard to find. And he's like a Swiss Army knife. And so we brought him into the mix. And so I remember talking to Anthony one day and saying, hey, one of my top actresses, like the top actress I want, her name is Dominique Fishback. And he goes, me and Dominique go way back. Like, we're really close friends. And I was like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, we're both from Brooklyn, this, that, and the other. So they already had a connection. I was like, this might be perfect. And so when we actually had the chemistry read with these two together, it was via Zoom. It was on the internet. And I was really worried. I remember being like, are they going to be able to vibe off each other? There's always that lag with internet connection. They're probably not going to be able to hear each other. And with that, and there was totally lag, disconnecting the whole nine, they still had this energy that just was popping off of a Zoom recording. I'm like, whoa, this is insane. They work perfectly together. It's like they just mesh, and they both brought this sort of edge to this, like this Brooklyn personality to it, but as well as they were just fun to watch. And so I'm glad that worked out. But Anthony knew her beforehand, and that helped out a lot. Every project that I basically say yes to and or create or get involved with has a piece of me in it. Like if I don't feel that at all, I probably won't do the project. Like I first read the script and I go, there goes the story. Then I go, what do I have to say? And is there me on the table? And if not, how can I incorporate myself? And so I really pull from personal things around me that I'm either going through or transitioning in with life, some part of my childhood, anything with my wife and family, like I'll incorporate it inside the film and kind of make the film a part of me. And so it becomes very personal. And I think you need that, especially with big films like this, where the scope is so huge and long hours on set, and you could be in post for a year trying to create this. You need that motivation throughout to say, okay, I am saying something. Okay, there is a part of me on this tape. I think people are really going to enjoy this. I want to connect to my audience, and I want them to feel like I left everything out there. And so I have to kind of find those elements that I can bring to every project and every character. The movie's Transformers Rise of the Beast technically is Transformers like 7, right? And so you're always trying to find unique ways for the humans to interact and or meet the robots. And so in this particular case, I thought it'd be interesting if we flipped it on his head a bit, right? And so you have Noah, this character who thinks he's about to steal a car, and turns out he's getting stolen by the car. He goes on this wild cop car chase through New York City, which is really hard to shoot by the way, in terms of a car chase sequence. And while he's going through this chase, he's starting to build a relationship with the car, even though he hasn't seen or met Mirage, the robot, yet. And so if you take a look at that sequence, we're really diving into their relationship and building this sort of unique back and forth as they're talking to each other, even though he's never even heard Mirage, aka Pete Davidson's voice yet. And so he's interacting just through the driving itself, so we get a glimpse of Mirage as a character with his driving technique. He rides fast. He's a little bit of a showboat. The way he turns corners. He's a risk taker. You know, you can see he's kind of like the rebellious Autobot, so to speak. We really settled on Mirage and Pete Davidson, who actually ad-libbed a lot, some of his character moments. And so they built a bond over just kind of how goofy and crazy Mirage is, you know, right off the rip. So you could kind of like him. There's like this warm feeling. You're like, I do want to go on an adventure with this guy. What I think is interesting about Noah's journey is that in every Transformers movie, Optimus Prime and a lead human being are always close. They're usually close, and this is the first time in a film where they're actually bumping heads at the very top of the film. They're not friends just yet. Optimus has one agenda, and that's to get his people, the Autobots, home to continue this war that they have on planet Cybertron with the Decepticons. And so Noah is not in his peripheral. It's not his goal right now. And so that kind of combats with Prime's goal to try to just get his people back to Cybertron. Noah's goal to try to protect his sort of like bumps heads. And so you see these two characters who are trying to figure things out along this journey. Will they accept each other? Will they become friends? And that becomes really the heartbeat of the film, is whether or not Prime and Noah will ever work together. Will we break that line, that barrier from, you know, human beings and what we're considering these aliens? Creating the Maximals was a very unique and cool process. Like, again, we've never seen them in live action. You know, we've seen them in some of the actual graphic novels, and we've seen them in a cartoon back in the early 2000s. And there's actually a reboot now that's actually out of the cartoon series. So it was a huge responsibility to introduce the Maximals in this film, make sure that they look the part, make sure that their story makes sense, and make sure that we're introduced to a new faction that falls in line with the DNA of the rest of the Transformers. Optimus Primal is a very noble character, and he's very much connected to the human beings on Earth. He is teaching, if you will, through this journey, a lesson to Optimus Prime, and understanding that there's a bigger fight at play, and we know you're worried about your people on Cybertron, but we have to worry about everybody. And so he's a big, huge, I would say, character and element to Prime becoming the Prime that we're all used to knowing in the Michael Bay films and Transformers 1, 2, 3, and 5. So the Maximals sort of help lift Optimus Prime and to help him become the Optimus that we know today. When it came to casting the Maximals in our film, I felt like I wanted to cast people who were actually the Maximals personalities off the rip, you know, in terms of like who they were. So when casting Michelle Yeoh, it just felt like she already embodied Airazor. And what I mean by that is Michelle Yeoh carries this sense of regalness with her. You know, she's Michelle Yeoh. She's a legendary actress, and she has this very soft demeanor. Like, she can really pull you into a scene dramatically, but at the same time, she's a fighter, right? She can bite back, and we wanted to have that with Airazor. Like, Airazor was someone that you can lean on, someone who can voice wisdom and be that person of reason, but at the same time, if she needs to blow up a bridge or get, you know, violent, she can. And so we had Airazor, who is this sweet and, again, regal-esque, very elegant type of design and bird. And at the same time, she could turn into a dragon at any second and just to light things up. So we thought Michelle Yeoh carried that personality and that fire. Ron Perlman came about because, one, it's Ron Perlman. the legend, and two, he actually was Optimus Primal in a cartoon before. So like I actually heard his voice before as Primal, and I was like, oh wow, this is actually pretty cool. Like I dug it, and so when I brought him in and had a conversation with him, he was like, man, I'll be glad to actually voice Optimus Primal again. And I don't want to say it was like having a second shot, but he had ideas too that he would want to, make a little different from what he had in the cartoon. So already I felt like we had this sort of like, all right, we both are accepting the challenge of making Primal really stick out on screen. And he just felt like there was a sense of pride behind playing Optimus Primal again. And his voice always sits in that like baritone, dark, gritty voice, and I was like, that'll be great for Optimus Primal, just because of the size and who he is. I think that up against Peter Cullen, I think we just had a nice balance for back and forth between the two, and so that's how we casted Ron Perlman. I got emotional meeting Peter Cullen, and you would think it's because it's Peter Cullen, he's the voice of Optimus Prime, but it was honestly how sweet he was. He's a really genuine guy. He's from Montreal, he's from Canada, and so he has that personality with him. And on top of that, he was just really good, nice guy. Like you want to think, all right, here goes this star, and when you walk in the room, you're like, do you know who you are? You're Peter Cullen. Like you're the legendary Optimus Prime, and he does not act that way at all. A very humble guy. And so I got very emotional after our first session because the way Optimus Prime sounds, it's not how Peter Cullen talks. You know what I mean? Like Peter Cullen gets behind that mic, you see his eyes sort of dim, and he goes deep into Optimus Prime mode. You're like, whoa, this is really happening. I could not believe it, and like I'm hearing it in the ADR booth, and I'm just like, whoa, this is amazing. He has the presence of a giant, and it just was just an amazing experience. I did not know what Pete Davidson was going to bring to the table. It's part of the reason why I casted him, because Pete Davidson could be off the wall. There's Pete Davidson, but yet he can embody so many different characters. And so when he came into the room, I had this script, and I'm like, this is the direction we're going, but I want you to bring you to the table. And so he would improvise, and what was surprising was his knowledge, both from the 90s and that era. So he would make these callbacks and references to different movies in the 90s, different music in the 90s, and he did this all on his own, and he would make it a part of Mirage as if Mirage didn't have anything but 90s music and movies to sort of watch and hear. And so he was just a car, and he was just absorbing as much of the culture in the 90s as possible. And so he brought that into his character. So every time you just see these small little bits, if you catch them, you're like, wait a minute, he's quoting this movie, or he's acting like this person, or he's doing the fist dab or the fist bump. Where's he learn that from? And so he brought all that to the table that just wasn't there in the script. And that's pretty much Pete Davidson. It's all him. This creative genius. I'm a huge fan of Peter Dinklage. As I told you before, I'm a fan of actors usually before I even cast them, and I was really hoping that he would play this role. Man, I wanted a bad guy who could be scary, intimidating, menacing, but yet had this sense of intelligence and how he talks and how he speaks. And Peter Dinklage is that already. And so when he came in, he just brought this really dark character to the table. And when we were in his booth and trying to find the right voice, he was like, I want to make sure though that yes, he's dark, yes, he's big, yes, he's scary, but he's not dumb. He's smart, and he's always one step ahead of you, and that's how he maneuvers. So in the film, the character maneuvers that way. He's always plotting and setting up things. And then the second option is, if you don't accept the offer, or if that doesn't work, then we can fight, and then we can battle, and I'm gonna show you who I really am. And so Peter Dinklage really understood that, and just to be in the same room as Peter Dinklage and actually carve out a character and go through the different voices and stages and working on inclinations and how you speak was just a really cool experience. It wasn't one where he had to come to the table and say, this is my voice, I'm gonna just use this. He really tried to embody Scourge, and he really pulled from a lot of the Scourge designs. He would look at the design itself and say, okay, what are his parts, what's moving on him, so he can get a feel of how to project his voice and who is he standing over and what they're looking at. So he took an actor's approach to play Scourge, which I think shows across the screen. I think the audience is going to go for a thrill ride in this one. I feel like the audience is not just going to watch the film. I think they're definitely going to experience it. I feel like we spent a lot of time diving into the characters so that they can care about them. So as they're going through this big action sequences, I think they're really going to feel emotionally connected to all the characters in the film. There's humor, there's a little bit of horror, and there's a lot of action, and again, there's a lot of heart. So I feel like you get a little bit of everything when watching Transformers: Rise of the Beast.